Just a few weeks ago, the Steelers' season looked to be lost. But after two critical games with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, Pittsburgh is back in the playoff race with a solid chance to make the postseason. A road win today would go a long way to help those chances as the NFL's Week 18 slate kicks off in Baltimore. We have all the latest on the next installment of the greatest rivalry in football coming up next. You're watching Steelers Kickoff, and it's live right here on KDKA TV.
Welcome to BetMGM Steelers Kickoff.
Baltimore, Maryland. M&T Bank Stadium is the site of this afternoon's Steelers season finale. A Pittsburgh win would go a long way in helping the team's playoff hopes. Baltimore will be resting many players since they have locked up the number one seed on a snowy day in Baltimore. Good game day morning, everyone, and welcome inside the KDKA studios for another edition of Steelers Kickoff. I'm Bob Pompeani, flanked by the quarterback of the program, Mr. Charlie Batch. He's here as always. Good analysis upcoming. Rich Walsh and Gerry Dulac will be along shortly from Baltimore as well. The big news, once again, Mason Rudolph is getting the start at quarterback this week, and Coach Mike Tomlin named Rudolph third week in a row now. He did that back on New Year's Day in a press conference. Rudolph coming off an impressive performance, back-to-back games now. Kind of hard not to start Rudolph after earning the coaching staff's trust and watching the offense perform at the highest levels of this season. And speaking of that, take a look at the upward trend since Rudolph took over as starter. Before he came in, this team was only averaging 15 points a game. He has more than doubled that output in 2 weeks, and they are also gaining more yards. They have a better third down conversion, and margin of victory has risen. So, Charlie, Rudolph seems to have sparked this entire offense, not just the passing game. What has he done that Kenny Pickett couldn't do?
Yeah, he's being aggressive down the field, and it starts with that offensive line. They are protecting him. He's standing in that pocket. And I tell you see an energetic wide receiver group right now because, yes, it's easy to take the first read, but Mason is going through his reads, and sometimes you have to be patient to get to your second and sometimes third reads. And when you do that, all receivers, they realize on every single play that they are a valuable option, and that's why you see the spark in the offense right now.
So it is an infectious thing, there's no doubt, and it's time right now for our quarterback analysis presented by Cleveland Brothers. Throughout the season, we've shown you passing charts that, quite frankly, have been a little embarrassing at times, but take a look at this chart because it shows how Rudolph has really spread the ball around the field in Seattle here, specifically toward the sidelines, middle of the field, short and deep. Charlie, some people thought it was lack of diversity in the passing game had more to do with the scheme, but does this show that the quarterback's decision also plays a big part in it?
It does, and it goes back to what I talked about before, and that second and third option, because you see Mason right there, you understand, looking to the right, immediately knows where his check down is, and you can see as the receiver from the backside coming in, being part of that 1-2-3 passing tree in that particular option. Here it is again, another option, corner route by George Pickens there, and you can see Mason delivering a nice ball, and that just goes to show you that Mason is seeing the field a lot better, but again, that happens when you have a veteran quarterback versus a young quarterback.
No question. Now it's time to head to Baltimore, Maryland. That is the scene today. Rich Walsh is standing by. He has more on the quarterback situation heading into this game. Rich, take it away.
Well, a rainy Baltimore, Maryland. Kenny Pickett practiced all week, and that ankle is healthy now, and he will be Mason Rudolph's backup for today's game against the Ravens. But there was some misinformation about last weekend and his status. Pickett adamantly denies any reports that suggest he refused to be the backup in Seattle last Sunday. He said that did not happen, and any reports to the contrary are inaccurate. And he wanted to clear the air and set the record straight before Tuesday's practice.
There was no talk of me being a backup quarterback this week in terms of being a 2. If I was healthy enough to play and the trainers and coaches felt like I looked good enough to play, I was going to start and play. If they believed that I was not, which they believed I was not going to dress and suit up for the game. So whoever reported that, I don't know where it started. It's kind of crazy what people will write and put out there to try to, prove their point or help their standpoint or their careers and what you guys do. But, disappointing to see that without any proof or basis of it.
Well, Pickett is healthy now and will be the number 2 for today's game against the Ravens, and the only way he sees action is if they pull Mason Rudolph at some point in today's game. Guys?
All right, Rich, thanks. Now it's time to take a look at the playoff scenarios for the Steelers heading into this final week. This is kind of familiar territory because they've needed help several times over the years, a win would be ideal, but it is not necessary. If the Steelers win, they would need either the Jaguars to lose to the Titans or a Bills loss to the Dolphins. The Steelers could also get into the playoffs with a win and a Colts-Texans tie. That's highly unlikely. But the Steelers could also lose this game and still make it, so long as the Jaguars lose to the Titans and the Denver Broncos beat the Raiders in Vegas. We're going to delve into those games a little later with Charlie Batch, and we're just getting started here on Steelers Kickoff. When we return, we lay out the reasons why TJ Watt really should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. That's coming up next.
Welcome back to BetMGM Steelers Kickoff.
Every week, the law firm of Bordas & Bordas contributes $500 to the Sacks for Kids campaign. That's their donation. They pledge it every week, and every time the Steelers do record a takedown, it's money in the bank. 53 sacks so far, $26,000 in donations from Bordas & Bordas. Thank you very much. TJ Watt is a big reason why they got so many sacks this season, and despite that, he is not the favorite for NFL Defensive Player of the Year award at this moment. Watt is currently tied with Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals with the league in sacks with 17 of those. Important to mention, he also leads the NFL in sacks. He led him in 2020 and 2021 before the injury hurt his numbers last season. Charlie, these numbers show Watt's sacks, but it's also numbers that he's near the top of, like turnovers, quarterback hits, tackles for losses. Do you think he should win another Defensive Player of the Year when it's all said and done?
I do. I mean, this guy's literally leading in almost every statistical category right now, and it just baffles me on why he's not the front runner. Of course, they talk about Myles Garrett, and then you talk about Micah Parsons down there in Dallas, but they were winning at the beginning of the year, and some of them kind of fizzled off. Did that hurt the Steelers in some type of way that they weren't winning consistently? I don't know. I don't have a vote, but if I did have a vote, TJ would be my Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think across the board, the numbers are better. Meanwhile, it's time to head back to Baltimore. Rich Walsh is joined by our Steelers insider from the Post-Gazette, Mr. Gerry Dulac. Guys, take it away.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. I think TJ Watt should be the Defensive Player of the Year this year, and I don't understand why he's not the front runner. Do you have any explanation? What do you think, and how do you compare his stats this year to the year that he won it?
Well, you know, Rich, I think the biggest reason why is because the two guys are in front of him who are probably likely to win it, Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. Both of those teams are winning teams who are already in the playoffs, so I think that's probably the biggest reason why TJ Watt's probably third on the list. But you look at what he did 2 years ago when he led the league with 22.5 sacks, tied an NFL record. Rich, he had a sack every 31.2 plays. This year, he has a sack every 53 plays. So, his numbers back then were staggering. He had more quarterback hits. He had more forced fumbles, more tackles for loss. That was a monster year he had 2 years ago. And while this year is very good and he's tied for the league lead, it really doesn't compare to the numbers that he had 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's healthy this year, too. That's a good thing. And I think if he has 2 or 3 sacks here today, maybe the story changes a little bit. Guys?
Yeah, hopefully that'll be the case, and hopefully it'll be the case in a win down in Baltimore. Thanks, gentlemen. After the break, we're going to send it back down to Baltimore. Rich is standing by with a preview of the AFC's #1 seed, the Ravens. How'd they get there? We'll talk about it next.
BetMGM Steelers Kickoff is presented in part by your Western PA Chevy dealers.
We play a brand of football that people don't want to play.
We do.
I saw what Patrick Queen said, that a lot of people are unwilling to play their style of ball. But I think that's just our style.
A lot of ways to describe this rivalry. It's physical football of the year.
No two teams know each other better.
The most intense rivalry.
We play that brand of football.
That was an "are you kidding me" catch.
We want to play that brand of football every game, every down.
We do play a similar style of ball. Styles do make fights, as they say in boxing.
A heavyweight fight with our biggest rival, with everything on the line.
He turns it upfield, still on his feet. Touchdown, Najee Harris. The Steelers seal the deal in Baltimore.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah, it gets you in the mood, doesn't it? A special thanks to Steelers Media Production for another great hype video right there on this big rivalry. The Ravens have basically taken care of everything they need to do heading into this game. They are the AFC's #1 seed, and John Harbaugh had some interesting decisions to make this week. We head back to Maryland. Rich Walsh is standing by with a preview. Rich?
Bob, here in Baltimore, honestly, it doesn't feel like your typical Steelers-Ravens rivalry game at the end of the year, and that's because the Ravens really have nothing to play for. They wrapped everything up. Most of their starters will be sitting the bench, so there's a sense of calm from that Ravens fan base, which is really weird. That lack of urgency is due to the Ravens having already locked up the top spot in the AFC. It remains to be seen exactly how many starters will get the day off, but we know for sure that Lamar Jackson will not play, so that means the Steelers will get another look at backup quarterback Tyler Huntley. Huntley has started twice against the Steelers here in Baltimore and lost both times, although he did beat them once in Pittsburgh. As for the other starters, John Harbaugh says don't expect to see wholesale changes.
It's not like the preseason where you have a bunch of guys. I mean, you have 6 spots to work with, and there's going to be probably somewhere in that range with different guys who have injuries. Somewhere 3, 4, 5, 6 guys every week. That's how it is every week.
Star wideouts Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers may not see many snaps, and starting tailback Gus Edwards will likely be replaced by Justice Hill, who scored the Ravens' only touchdown earlier this year in Pittsburgh.
But I do think our system is built in such a way as we are equal opportunity, scheme builders, I guess you could say. It's set up for everybody.
Defensively, the Ravens have been dominant all season. As a group, they lead the league in both sacks and points allowed, and most of their starters are expected to play. Strong safety Cal Hamilton has been nursing an injury, so he may not see the field, but free safety Geno Stone definitely will, and the Newcastle native will be extra motivated to silence the Steeler fans up in Lawrence County.
Now it's kind of crazy just because, everyone's still fans and all my friends are, and they always give me crap about being Steeler week and things like that. So, I just know I got an extra chip on my shoulder this week, try to prove them wrong.
All right, since the Ravens' inception, the series has been very, very close. The Steelers have a 7-game edge overall, largely because of their success recently, and the overall points scored is only around a 30-point difference. Now it's time to bring in our Steelers insider, Gerry Dulac. And Jerry, the weather isn't really great here in Baltimore today. It's 35 degrees, it's cold, windy, and raining. But the Steelers have the run game, and it's been effective lately. I would imagine that they're going to lean on that again today.
Well, Rich, we saw what it did in Seattle, 202 yards, their second-best effort of the season. And there's a couple reasons why the effectiveness of the run game. One is the offensive line. We saw last week what they did in Seattle. Everybody credited them for that performance. And the big thing is what's happening is they're winning their one-on-one blocks. And that's creating room inside the tackles. And that's where we're seeing the Steelers get all their running yards. The other one is what they're doing with Mason Rudolph. One of the things Matt Canada always talked about was wanting to run play action. But whenever he lined Kenny Pickett under center, 99 times out of 100, they ran the ball. What they're doing now with Mason Rudolph, when he lines under center, they're having him throw the ball from time to time. And what that does is it keeps the defense guessing. So when he does line up under center, they can't always be thinking, okay, they're going to run the ball. And that's helped create some space as well.
Yeah, Rudolph definitely has this passing game clicking, but it might be tough here today because of the weather. Guys?
All right, thanks for the insight, guys. Appreciate that. The Ravens, were in this exact situation back in 2019 when the Steelers came to town. They sat their starters. They still beat the Steelers that day, but they lost in their first playoff game. So, Charlie, as a guy who's been there, done that, where do you come down on team resting starters versus keeping them going because they're playing good football right now?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to really what your team is made up of. If you have a veteran presence team, they have some playoff experience, you can rest them. But ultimately, when they're younger, you now have to make that tough decision. And when you look where Baltimore was at in 2019, they had a young Lamar Jackson. He won the MVP. That was the first one, which he should win the second one this year. So now you have a seasoned vet with more experience. So I think based off of that, I think John Harbaugh allows Lamar Jackson to sit. And I don't think they run into that problem in the playoff right now because that team is very, very confident right now.
But they want to beat the Steelers. They would love nothing better, right?
Oh, I promise you Harbaugh's not going to do the Steelers any favor today. He is going to go out here and potentially, try to dominate this game and eliminate the Steelers any way possible.
In recent seasons, the Steelers have had to play both Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley, so this is not a new scenario at all for them. Both players have similar numbers against the Steelers: completion percentage, yards per game, sacks per game, and record. So, Charlie, whether it's been Huntley or Jackson, the Steelers really have limited their quarterbacks. Why they had that kind of success?
Yeah, these teams are built the same. You heard Mike Tomlin talk about very similar that way. They draft the same way. They build their team off of the defensive side of the ball. And when you look at from a consistency standpoint in this division, it's going to be Ravens-Steelers typically every year outside of a few. But I think right now this is exactly where they're at. And then when you play each other twice a year, you know their signals, they know yours. You have to dominate the line of scrimmage.
No doubt. The Steelers won't be getting a division championship this season, but another streak will remain intact. They won't be finishing in the basement once again. Since its inception in 2022, the Steelers have never finished last in the AFC North. The last time they were in the division last was 1989, an impressive streak. And one negative, this is the first time, though, since that year, 1989, the Steelers are finishing under the Browns in the standings. And due to their spot there, the Steelers will play the third-place team in the AFC South, the AFC East, and the NFC South next season. Only team right now that is locked into one of those spots is the New York Jets, so they will be on the Steelers' schedule next year. Coming up next on Steelers Kickoff, we whip around the AFC to take a look at the games that matter most for the Steelers if they have intentions of making the playoffs. Keep it locked right here to KDKA.
Welcome back to BetMGM Steelers Kickoff.
All right, welcome back to the program. Charlie, the playoffs are on the line this weekend, and the Steelers certainly would boost their chances of making the playoffs, but it's not entirely necessary to win this game in a strange mathematical twist. If the Steelers do win this game, they would need either a Jags loss to the Titans or a Bills loss to the Dolphins. The Steelers could also get into the playoffs with a win and a Colts-Texans tie. How unlikely that would be. But the Steelers could also lose this game and still make it. So as long as the Jaguars lose to the Titans and the Denver Broncos beat the Raiders in Vegas, they could get in. So now it's time to take a look around the AFC at the games that mean the most for the Steelers following their matchup in Baltimore. First, the Jags-Titans in Nashville. Trevor Lawrence's ability is the question. Can he be there? Availability. And even so, he's probably not going to be 100% with the shoulder injuries. The Steelers could use the Titans beating Jacksonville, and it won't be easy. The Jaguars have beaten them 3 straight. But Jacksonville has typically struggled in Nashville. So how do you see this one going today, Charlie?
Yeah, I can see the Titans actually jumping on top of the Jaguars only because Ryan Tannehill, he's playing for his career. The Titans are looking to move on from that contract, and they have a young Will Levis at quarterback that's going to take over next year. So he can spark that particular Titans offense and hopefully do the Steelers a favor here.
Yeah, and the other thing is Mike Vrabel maybe coaching his last game down there. We really don't know. The other game Steelers fans will no doubt be following, and it could be a long day tomorrow, is Buffalo at Miami. This one might be tougher considering how Josh Allen has typically played against the Dolphins, man. He has had big numbers. In 11 career starts against them, he's won 9 times, and he's put up a ton of yards. And check out the touchdown-interception ratio of 31-5. So do you think sometimes quarterbacks just seem to play better against specific teams?
They do, and the NFL knew exactly what they were doing with this particular matchup, putting the Steelers here today and forcing Steelers Nation to have to follow football all day tomorrow. But I think when you look at what's going on here in Buffalo right now, a lot is at stake with Josh Allen here. They win, they're the number 2 seed. If they lose, they could potentially be out the playoffs. So this game is very important for those Bills, and it's going to be interesting to see how healthy Tyreek Hill is in that matchup here today. But to your point, yes, Josh has put up big numbers against the Dolphins.
Yeah, the thing is, Miami's already in. They want to win a division, but even if they lose, they're in. Buffalo, not so much. All right, almost out of time here on the Kickoff. Coming up, we have our predictions. You never want to miss that. It's coming up next.
BetMGM Steelers Kickoff is presented in part by your Western PA Chevy dealers.
All right, let's take a look one more time at what this situation is. The Steelers currently are on the outside looking in. Your playoff scenario, Baltimore number 1 seed. Miami's playing for a number 2 seed and the division. Kansas City struggling. Jacksonville needs to win the division. Cleveland's already in with Joe Flacco. Who would have thought? Buffalo could be out, but they also could be number 2 seeded. Indianapolis currently in. It makes for a complete logjam, basically. As we go back down to Baltimore for predictions, Rich and Gerry, take it away.
Well, since I was the only one that picked the Steelers last week, I'll go first. I like the Steelers again today. I think it's been a close, low-scoring game, obviously because of the weather. I like the Steelers to win this one 23-20. The Ravens really have nothing to play for. It doesn't feel like it's even a game down here with the fan base. So that's the reason I like the Steelers. Mason Rudolph is loose, and they're going to lean on that run game.
Yeah, Rich, I agree with you. The Ravens don't have anything to play for. They're going to rest a lot of their key guys. You know, the Steelers, strange as it seemed, they've won the last 3 times here in Baltimore and 4 of the last 5. The offense is starting to look like an NFL offense. I like the Steelers 24-18.
And they're 2-0 against Huntley down here, guys.
All right, Charlie.
Yeah.
You say what?
If anybody followed me the whole month of December, when I picked the Steelers to win, they lost. When I picked them to lose, they won. So I'm keeping that trend now that we are in January. I'm picking the Ravens to win 20-17.
Well, I don't see that. I see Mason Rudolph continuing. A lot more points. 27-19 Steelers win. Listen, we have a busy Saturday for you. It seems like a Sunday every week. Seems weird, but here we are on a Saturday. And we have post-game coverage tonight. After the game, which is not on KDKA, but after the game, switch to KDKA at 7 o'clock. That's the mothership, KDKA. Then at 8 o'clock, we switch over to KDK Plus. We have the Extra Point. We have a special edition of the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. That's all the way throughout the night. So join us. Chris Hoke will join me for that. Rich Walsh will be in the locker room. We have a lot to get into. And thanks for joining us on this Steelers Saturday. Hopefully it's a wonderful weekend for you guys. Happy New Year, and we'll see you after the game tonight on KDKA and Plus.